Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly. I'm your host, Christopher Gallagher, and we're going to talk. We're going to talk about Celtic. We're going to talk about recent fixtures. We're going to talk about upcoming fixtures. We're certainly going to talk about some transfer. I'm not going to say news, but some transfer rumours, certainly. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the wonderful Stuart Dugan. Hello, Stuart. How the bloody hell are you?
I'm great, Gall. I've never been more enthused or motivated to talk about Glasgow Celtic tonight with you.
Lovely. Absolutely delighted to hear that. We're also joined by the returning Barry Gallagher. Hello, Barry. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. Delighted to be back in this lovely setting, and I'm feeling very relaxed tonight until we start to talk about Celtic.
Yeah, we are recording not in the Cynic studio. We're recording in our front room. They've got some lovely throws and soft furnishings. Are you happy with the setup, Stuart?
I'm extremely comfortable for an uncomfortable conversation. So thank you for your hospitality, more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Before, obviously, we're going to talk about the Falkirk game, a couple of questions, some transfer links, a little bit of news, but not much in terms of, anything outside of transfer discussions. But I wanted to talk about how Celtic are affecting you. Because it's maybe not something we talk about necessarily a lot. I do the Cynic full-time as my job, so I'm covering pretty much everything. We do podcasts every single day. So I'm talking about Celtic trying to talk about it from different perspectives. But Barry, obviously, you go to home games, you go to away games. It's very much in your blood. It's in all of our bloods, of course. But how is it affecting you?
It's an interesting one because I was talking to a guy I used to work with last night during the game, and I think I had a conversation with Alan of this parish maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I think for most of this season it's been anger, but what I think is more worrying and probably more dangerous than anger is it's starting to turn to apathy. And I think anger is something you can deal with because it's short, sharp, and it's a release. But I think apathy is like a sort of lingering, slow burner, and sometimes it's hard to get back out of that. And I think that's maybe something, probably a sort of deeper discussion further down the line. But if that happens to be the case for the wider support, it's sometimes really difficult for the club to get that back. And that's worrying for me because, Gall, we did that podcast a few years ago about the 95-96 transfer rumours one, and I live for stuff like that. It's been a bit of a sort of joke that I live for the half-tens in the group chats, but even now I'm like, what's the point? I probably foolishly thought that after the shambles of the summer transfer window, when you had all the sort of, initially they said there was nothing wrong, and then the board started to change it to say that we've learned from it and give us time to get this right. I thought that things would maybe be different here out of sort of a reaction that it had to be. But it's the same old story. I think we are really in a dogfight, and I'm not confident that we will win the title this year, and that's not a good position to be in. But yeah, I feel that they've almost kind of worn me down to just kind of accept that I think the next few years could be pretty troubling for Celtic, and that's never a nice thing to do because, as you say, it is potentially my only hobby, and that might sound sad to some, but yeah, I just feel that they've kind of worn me down, and I don't know how I get out of this.
Stuart, your wonderful wife famously was, when you were talking about your troubles with Celtic, she famously said, "Why don't you and your pal support someone else?" Which I still think about that on a regular basis. But if it was only that easy, how's it affecting you?
I do quote that to you quite often because every time we come up against it, that option it is on the table.
It becomes more appealing.
She made the point that you could always, if so long as all your other friends picked the same one, you would still get all the camaraderie. You could start a wee podcast about that and everything. It's like, thanks, dear. I appreciate that. Appreciate the support. It's just. How does it feel? It's like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill where every time you think you're getting somewhere, you realise you're just not. And obviously we see that quite acutely with a really good performance on Saturday. And you think, well, do you know what? All the players did need was an arm around the shoulder and with Martin O'Neill in there, you're going to get positive performances and there's a lot more effort. And then you see last night and it was just absolutely dreadful. And you're like, I forgot what we are.
These players
will get you sacked.
I'll get you sacked.
And a little bit of like what Barry's saying as well. You just presumed after the summer window that they would have to, even by their own standards, they would have to do something to get this one right. And it's like, fool me 8 times, shame on me. Fool me a 9th time, let us all support another football team, because that is the way that the window is going. And yeah, there's just a bit of a helplessness that it's irrespective of what your position was, maybe after that summer window when, or even in years before, when people would gripe about the board and an inability to build from a position of power. I think even the fairest Celtic supporter who pays the least attention must have to accept that the people running the club, there's such a degree of incompetence that it's really frightening. And I can't remember if I spoke about it on here or if I just spoke about it privately, but there is a very real possibility that Celtic could enter the wilderness because of the state of the squad, because of the amount of appointments that they need to get right in terms of the people that govern the club. Because I said last week, I feel like the self-preservation, the sort of digging their heels in from the Celtic board has gone, because I think there's so many lame ducks there that I think there's an inevitability that like Michael Nicholson won't be in post by the end of the year, and with that they'll kind of clean house. But while they're there, they're just so unbelievably incompetent and not cut out for even the most basic thing. And I was with my friend Guy yesterday, who's he doesn't really follow Scottish football. He's a big Man United fan. He was asking how I felt about Martin O'Neill, and I was like, yeah, it's always nice to have him back. I was like, do you know who's the head of recruitment at the moment at Celtic? And he was like, who? I was like, Martin O'Neill. And he was like, what do you mean? And I had to explain it to him, and he nearly took the car off the road. He was like, I can't believe that's the way that it is. And so you just feel pretty helpless, and that's obviously not a nice thing. Sometimes games make you feel better, but last night we won and it made me feel worse. So
yeah, we'll get to yesterday, but I just want to kind of stay on this for a little bit longer. And I was in the pub with our good friend Chris Bowd the other day, and we were having chats about different scenarios. And the scenario being that if Celtic didn't win the league this year, I think in the past the boards have always been like, if we don't win it this year, we'll win it next year. But the difference with this is Rangers and Hearts have levelled up. Now, they might not. Now, them levelling up might not be. Maybe it's us dropping down, and there's a middle ground where we've dropped off, but they've levelled up to the point where, actually, if we, I know people who work in football who currently are looking at the summer window. We're not looking at the summer window. We don't even have a manager for the summer window. Rangers and Hearts are probably looking. Hearts have bought 2 players for the summer window. Barry,
I think I agree with what you're saying, but I think obviously we have regressed, but it's the fact that Rangers and Hearts are levelling up off the field as well.
Yeah, that's the key thing.
Because we were having a conversation just before we came on there that if Hearts win the league, the likelihood is they probably wouldn't do 2 in a row just because it seems like a one-off. But they're giving themselves every possible chance to start the season well again next year. And Rangers are doing it too as well. Not to give them too much credit, but they seem to be. They obviously had the basket case of Thelwell, etc., and Russell Martin, but they
nipped it in the bud.
Nipped that in the bud, fixed it. And there's no guarantee that their signings on paper, which look good, will be good, but at least they're doing something. And my worry is that not only do we get left behind off the pitch, as Stuart says, that squad is honking. There's no real sellable assets now, I would say, maybe Dyson. But the more worrying thing is what's going on behind the scenes, because that gives you the best possible chance to get things right on the park, and we've got none of that.
Also, the other thing, I was talking to a few people the last couple of days about how when we were growing up, and we're all of similar age. I'm slightly older, but when we moved to Celtic Park, and Martin O'Neill comes in, it was just such a Celtic were taken from the doldrums. But as a support, it was so ingrained in us that we needed to get back to the top. And once we got back to the top, that Celtic getting back to the top was everything we desired and dreamed, right? But what I kind of feel like is that if Celtic drop off, there's a very good chance that we lose the next generation of fans because of that apathy and because so many other options to do. And I don't want to be one of those people who's like, you can go on Netflix and you can play video games and you can, be on your phone and all that. But it's a real concern that, a lot of our friends that have kids have an English Premier League team as well as Celtic. If the board don't snap out of this and make drastic changes and Celtic don't get back on top, not even back on top, but just become competent again, Stuart, do you think we could lose fans because that connection is rescinding because the board are running the club in a way that does not reflect the support?
It's possible. If I'm absolutely honest, it's not one of my chief concerns. Just selfishly, that's neither here nor there.
You've got a nephew. You've got a nephew. Is he a big Celtic guy?
He likes Celtic. Yeah.
Has he got other football teams that he likes though?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's a wider conversation about how children of that generation engage with football because...
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about.
But I think that's even a successful Celtic doesn't guarantee that because there's so many... The attention span of, so my nephew's 11, turning 12, and the attention span of a child and the ability to sit and watch a 90-minute football game is just not quite what it was when we were kids for a number of reasons, so... Yeah, that is a sadness that comes with it. I guess they just don't really understand that. Maybe there's something to say that it will harden them up and that they've had it too easy and that they need their own 90s.
A clip round the ear.
Maybe, maybe. I think from certainly when I was growing up, there was a lot more culture around the football club the way there isn't now in terms of, coming from, an Irish Catholic background. And I know that's not everyone, but for me specifically, Celtic was so ingrained into my everyday life the way that I'm not sure it is with people these days. And I think a lot of that is to do with the apathy of the board and Dermot Desmond are in control and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. And obviously when you are particularly young, and especially if all you've known of Celtic is winning, then it's particularly unpleasant to suddenly lose and be like, oh, what's that all about? And it's unpleasant for us. And I think that I do stop myself. We've talked about, there's a very real possibility that Celtic will not win this league. And Celtic don't have a divine right to win the league every year. And they also just statistically won't win the league every year. So it is coming to us all at some point, the punch in the mouth that you haven't won the league. But I think there's ways to lose leagues.
That's it. Yeah,
and I also think that Hearts' form is that of a title-winning side in terms of they've only been beaten once. That's tick box kind of number one to go through the season largely unbeaten and to be able to win significant games against your rivals. They've kind of done... Oh, they've lost twice, actually. They got beat by Hibs, didn't they? Sorry. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a team's never won the league having more than, 5 domestic defeats, and Celtic currently have 5 domestic defeats, and we're not yet out of January, so it's hard to stomach that, and it's also hard to stomach losing a league when your biggest rivals have had their worst start in the club's history, but they could just sail past you by January, February time because of this staggered decline in standards. And
by the way, I'm not talking about Celtic not winning the league and people not supporting Celtic because
I get that.
I just mean the quality of the player is dropping off a cliff. The quality of the entertainment in terms of what you're watching on the pitch and not buying players.
And match day experience as well.
Match day experience, all that stuff is in decline, Barry, and there'll come a point where people can't afford it and there will be other options to do. And if it keeps going like this and there's no hint that the Desmond dynasty are going to ungrip from their hold over Celtic, there will come a time 5 years, 10 years down the line where we'll all kind of be like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah, the fact that we still, so what was it, 20, 25, 26 years ago that we were spending £6 million on certain Hearts and just under that for Lennon, etc. But everything else goes up. The salaries of the board go up. The season ticket prices, that's the only thing that they understand and are happy to apply inflation. What a tenner off of £800 a year for my season ticket. There's no doubt that that'll probably go up again, regardless if we win or lose the league or not.
The butler's not going to pay for himself, though, Barry.
That's true. That's true. Those prawns keep them coming. But yeah, it's just. I think the thing is, Stu's right. Like you get a lot of averages. You have to accept that you're not going to win the league all the time. But there's never been a time in our history where we've been richer than we are right now.
That's it.
The money's just gathering dust. We spent £12 million on a tax bill when our stadium's crumbling. The squad's the poorest that is, and just as your catchphrase, Gall, about these players will get you sacked, I kept thinking about that last night every time Tanecki touched the ball. And I thought, like, he is our poster boy of the summer, our marquee signing, really. And he couldn't pass a ball 5 yards last night. I know we'll come on to it, but Balikwisha, not even in the squad. And I was thinking back to, I can't remember who said it, it might have been Christian a few years ago. It's not that Celtic don't spend enough money, it's they don't spend it right.
Yeah.
And that's just another facet of everything that is wrong with Celtic on and off the pitch.
I thought that I had today, and you're not going to like this. Imagine if, both in terms of the league position, as in literal points on the board from games that we wouldn't have dropped points in, if Celtic had not purchased Balikwisha and appointed Wilfred Nancy and instead spent £10 million on a striker, think about where you would be.
Yeah. I mean,
Champions League, probably.
Winning the Champions League.
Yeah. Listen, that was a bit of an existential chat. We'll maybe do that, kind of touch in on that, because I think it's important to realise why we're so upset, and it's not just about results, it's about the overall arching running of the club.
What's tickled me slightly is the notion of like a Hearts fan tuning in for a hate listen, and the first 15 minutes have been us just describing what generations of Celtic fans are going to be switching off. That's how bad we are.
What we should talk about, and do you know what? Before we get to the Falkirk game, we've got a couple of questions, so I'll get to them. This is from Russell Ferguson. Russell says, for the weekly, given how everything is playing out this season with our rivals Hearts and Rangers both churning out results and making moves in the transfer market while we sit idly by, out of 10, with 10 being very confident, 1 being not confident, where do you sit in terms of us winning the league? I'm currently at 4. I don't think it's a coin toss anymore. I think we need to be near perfect and rely on slip-ups. Sorry for the late message. Cheers. That kind of plays into a question I had where, what are Celtic's chances of winning the league this season? And where if you take us from where we are right now on the 15th of January, 1, no chance. 10, we'll win the league. Russell's at 4. Where's Barry?
I'd say 3.
Fucking hell.
Again, we were talking just before we came on. Like I felt a lot better on Saturday after the game, but last night I just thought, God, this team are dead. I feel like the good players who have been good for us over the years, they look as if they've come to the end of the cycle. We said that last year. I remember we lost a game at St Johnstone, maybe just about Easter time. And then the players who were never good enough just look like they're completely gone. So you're really relying on Martin O'Neill's bit of magic before the game and at half time to kind of drag us over the line. And just purely based on the squad as it is just now, there's no real game that I'm going into feeling confident that we'll win. And I think, as Stuart's made the point, Hearts have been very, very consistent. The last 2 games you've seen, they've gone down to 10 men and still managed to grind out results.
Do you think we would win again? If we went down to 10 yesterday, do you think we would have won?
It's difficult to say. But no, I wouldn't.
I was looking for a no there, I'll be honest.
Yeah, probably not. The fact that it was away at Dundee was away, wasn't it? And last night was at home for Hearts, so they've shown they can do it in either setting. But yeah, I just have no confidence in this team as it stands just now because they look devoid of ideas, devoid of creativity. Obviously, we're not taking the chances. I know we scored 4 on Saturday. And unless there is signings to come in, and I feel like, I know we'll come on to that, but I'm not confident we will get what we need. And there's no guarantee by the way that this season's going that we won't pick up injuries as well. Can you imagine we just get one signing, one striker in, and then McGregor gets an injury or Trusty or Scales get an injury or whatever? So I know it's fairly bleak sounding, but I have no confidence whatsoever that we're going to win the league. I was listening to the debrief with Will the other night, and he's consistently made the point for the last month or so that he thinks it would take a near miracle for for Celtic to win the league, and I completely agree. Again, we were talking about coming to the split. I feel that we could be out of it long before then. So it's a real concern that we don't win the league, and then the really embarrassing thing would be if we were to finish third.
Stuart, out of 10?
Probably about a 5 or a 6. I think that the way that Celtic are conducting their transfer business, and I don't think that it's like purposeful. It's purpose. I don't think they're like, let's wait and see what comes up in the window. I think it's just an absolute bin fire, and there's no systems in place to buy or sell players currently. So you might end up with a couple of players by the end of the window, but will you get them in before that Hearts game? And that Hearts game is really, really crucial. I think you do basically just need 1 or 2 players that could come in and spark something in the team, in the support, and the other players. You could argue that for a very, very, very small flash, you got that when Tenetke came into the team, and you're like, oh, suddenly this is an exciting player, and then you realise that there isn't actually much there. It's a bit smoke and mirrors. But I think if you could get 1 or 2 players in, if you can get Iheanacho, Srirachi back consistently fit, then the squad starts to look a bit better. But at the moment, that squad of players, and with the lack of additions, I keep hearing that Celtic have the best squad in the country and they have better players. And I want to know by what metric people are judging that. Is it like keepy ups? Is it their ability to like control the ball? Because
I think people would argue that
is it money?
Yeah. The fact that we've won the last how many leagues?
Yeah, but
and by the way, I'm not saying that but I think that's the metric people would use.
Sure, but I mean, like if you're going player for player, why is it that in the last, I know the Nancy situation, you have to introduce like, it was different tactics and it was this and it was that and players playing out of position, but really fundamental things like why are teams like Falkirk able to press better than Celtic? Like why do you have teams of that standard? And I thought Falkirk were really good yesterday, and I think they've had an amazing season, and full credit to them, and that's great. That's its own conversation. But why do you have players like Cammy Devlin and Nico Raskin bossing Celtic when they play in that midfield? Like, so who's got better players? Who's got the better squad? Do you really think that in a situation where Johnny Kenny is your only recognised striker, and when Liam Scales is your arguably best and most senior centre half, that you can lay a claim to having the best squad in the country? Like, you don't really.
I think something that was said the other day, I think we on Monday on the agenda, we looked through every transfer window since 2021. It's worth a listen. There's a lot of kind of interesting points made. I always thought Johnny K. There is also a part of all of us that I think that even shit Celtic players could go to another SPFL team and do well. I think there's been a narrative with that for a while. But if Johnny Kenny went to Hearts, he wouldn't play. Yeah. He wouldn't start. If he went to Hibs, he probably wouldn't start. And then that's kind of the thing where you realise, it's almost like a wake-up call for all of us, where I think some of us, and I include myself in this, sometimes there's a bit of an idea where even our crap players are better than, and that's just not true.
It's not.
And I think it's a wake-up call.
I mean, Kenny was linked with that St Mirren deal in the summer. He wouldn't start for St Mirren. No. And they're currently, 10th and not going well. Yeah. But both their strikers are better than Johnny Kenny.
And I think that's the worry with recruitment, because people say, these players are good to pick up because they've done well in the Conference League or whatever, Johnny Kenny. But when they are like your fourth choice, and then you whittle the squad down, and then they become your starting striker, it's a real worry. The other one that jumped out to me just as you guys were talking there was Luke McCowan. I thought he was dreadful last night when he came on. And some people thought it needed to be said what he said about Nancy, but I thought if you're going to come out and be that sort of vitriolic, you need to really be on your game. Because I was thinking last night, who are you blaming this week? Like, that's just the way it is, that he's the manager, he's telling me what to do, because you couldn't pass the ball 5 yards, and he's really soured like how I feel about him this season.
I thought the funny thing is Nancy played Luke McCowan more than any other manager that he's played under at Celtic, and like, we got another question. It's a long one. It's from Michael S. So Michael He's a big contributor to the Celtic, the Cynic WhatsApp group. If you are subscribed and you want to get involved, let us know. Hello, Cynics. Happy New Year. I'm feeling incredibly down about Celtic at the moment and just wanted to share some of my thoughts, if only for some catharsis, and to see what you think. We are the only club in the title race that doesn't have proper football people making the football decisions. We have skated by in other clubs' incompetence and good signings made by a manager nearly 5 years ago, and now it's coming back to bite us. Even if Hearts don't win the league this year, they will win it within the next few. They have some of the world's best recruitment analytics, and they've proven they are capable of finding better players than us for a fraction of the price. Rangers are no longer a complete basket case. They've made some mistakes this season, but they have no hesitation in pulling the trigger on problematic appointments and are making aggressive moves in the transfer market with an intent to win the league and secure Champions League funds because they go directly into it because of coefficients, club coefficients. Yeah, they go straight in.
There's one thing that has to. I want to say something to do with Olympiacos, but I think that's almost settled already.
Aye, pretty much. Motherwell are a better run club and a better team than us, and their highest paid player is on about $2,500 a week. They've made one signing that cost more than £400,000 since 2000. Nothing improves under this current regime. We've been on a steady decline since Ange left, and we're at the lowest ebb now. We will win nothing with this board at the helm. For me, this is the beginning of the end. Unless something changes, we could easily be finishing third. Look at Manchester United. There isn't a single person who would have predicted where they'd be in 2026 when Ferguson left after winning their last league. We're on the precipice of complete implosion if no action is taken by the fans to oust these charlatans. Terrifying points, good points, Michael. Stuart, your thoughts?
Yeah, all perfectly valid, and it's like we're saying. It could be like a real wilderness period, like. And the way that you were talking about Celtic in the 90s is the way that a lot of Rangers fans have spoken for the last decade. I know, obviously, with the exception of the COVID season, but like getting back to where they perceive that they belong and where they should be. And it's perfectly conceivable that, if Celtic get another managerial appointment wrong, if they don't sell any players, if they don't sign any players, if they continue on without a football model. It shows you've seen it's still less than a calendar year since the Bayern game, and you see how quickly we've fallen, and then you see how quickly Rangers have gone from Russell Martin to potentially winning this league. So stuff can flip really quickly, and it's perfectly feasible that we can be the sort of banter years joke team.
I think as well, like it's always kind of said that they like to hoard money for a rainy day. Well, it's fucking pouring just now. And that money could easily be whittled away quickly as well. As you say, they get managerial appointments wrong and having to pay them off and failed transfers. And as I made the point earlier, we don't really have players that we can sell for big money. So where is the revenue streams coming from? Because if we don't make the Champions League for a few years, I think if we finish third, it could be the Conference League. If
we finish third up with the Conference League, I would go. I think Scottish clubs, no matter who wins the league over the next couple of years, will probably not qualify for the Champions League just because I think it'll become more and more and more difficult. We'll have to do, if we win the league this year, I think we have to do 3 qualifiers that start in July. The point is, see that rainy day fund thing? They have created the situation where the rain's pouring in. So instead of being like, in case something monumental happens, we need a rainy day fund. But they are looking at the rainy day fund, and instead of spending £5 million to get 50, or spending £5 million to get 40, they don't, because of the rainy day fund. It's almost like cause and effect. It's like, because that's there, then we're completely paralysed and we're not going to spend in case we don't. It's the most backwards way of thinking.
Yeah, and they'll be backslapping themselves if they were able to get this right. And they'll say, well, that's why we kept that money, rather than thinking you caused having to spend all that money.
Sure, Celtic defeated Falkirk in what was holy mackerel, not a great game of football. Nygren scored the header, which just, I don't know what Scott Bain was doing, frankly, but shout out to my fellow Baniacs. We didn't create a lot. We were quite open at the back in terms of chances given up. Obviously, there's that chance in the first half where the ball's played down our left-hand channel. Kieran Tierney's beaten for pace, cut inside, and the guy doesn't finish. We were lucky to win yesterday.
Yeah, it's real call the cops has been a robbery sort of stuff. And it was very different from some of the games that we saw under Nancy, where we were creating lots and lots of chances and not taking our chances. Created very, very little. I can't think of another really good chance. I know a lot of people were sort of suggesting the Hitati chance at the end when it was a bit of a skirmish and kind of pops out. There wasn't really anything. And very lucky that Falkirk did take their chances. They absolutely deserved something, if not the whole 3 points last night. And I think that within that, one, we have mentioned that Falkirk are a good side. They've been playing really well, and credit to them. I also think that if you're looking for positives, and I know that we are, there is something to be said for how the fact that we dug in and didn't concede and didn't lose games, because ultimately that is kind of how Hearts and Rangers have been churning their way through this season. It's alarming, but that's not something that you would have seen under Nancy. I think you would have seen players chuck it a little bit earlier and feel sorry for themselves, and they didn't really do that. It was very chaotic, it was not very organised, but there was a lot of effort. But just really worrying that there seemed to be a complete inability to play through the lines, or even attempt to play through the lines. We didn't really play through the midfield
at all.
Felt like at any point in the whole game, which really, really showed up the likes of Tineke. I think Yang's been excellent for the last couple of weeks, but again, you, when we're back in this 4-3-3, you start to see these are not wingers that are really at the calibre that we've had over the last little while, and that are able to create clear-cut opportunities and score goals. I thought Tineke was getting a bit of a pass from folk last night, saying, he kept getting doubled up on. That guy is a mouse. I've never seen a bigger shite bag for Celtic, and it's so frustrating that...
Your favourite Reggie Blinker, of course.
That's what I was thinking.
I know. Take me back.
No, I don't.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, just give him the ball constantly. Either would lose it or just make the wrong decision or cut back inside. And I felt like certainly a lot in the second half we really reverted to nothing's on, play back to the keeper, nothing's on, play back to the keeper. And yeah, just really, really, really poor. And I thought that O'Neill's assessment of it was pretty fair, but he looked pretty shell-shocked.
Aye.
And he was like, that was not good.
I know XG isn't for everyone, but it's essentially just the quality of the chances we created. We had an XG of 0.77. Falkirk had an XG of 1.77. It felt, Barry, that if we hadn't scored that sort of freak goal, we might not have scored. And as Stuart says, grinding out results is the mark of champions, and we are the champions of Scotland. But it doesn't feel like that's going to continue. We need to figure something out.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the interview with O'Neill. I kind of thought he was saying about the transfer market, but he was kind of saying, give me a bit of slack. I kind of felt like that would apply more to what he's having to work with in terms of the squad, because I don't know if you noticed, I think it was even before the goal in the first half, Dyson kind of played a ball around the corner and no one was there, went straight out the park. And O'Neill was screaming at him, Dyson. I don't know if he got his attention, but he just looked shell-shocked. If he didn't know, well, he probably did. If he didn't know he was in a sort of dogfight with the shite that he's got to work with, he certainly would have last night. And yeah, as you both mentioned, Tineke, I thought he couldn't even make the pass. Seen a bit of times, it was under hit back to Tierney out the park. Tierney must have been thinking, what the fuck is this guy doing? And yeah, it's just the midfield, I thought, were so disconnected. I know Nygren scored, but he's such a peculiar player. He doesn't do much in the game. He feels like he's a million miles away from Engels and McGregor. I thought both of them were pretty poor last night as well. So in terms of pass marks, I can't really think of one. Arajo, I don't think he had a great night last night either. But the conditions, to be fair, the conditions weren't great. The pitch, but you're looking for something to give you inspiration that it's going to get better. And I know we had a conversation last night, but I feel worse after that, knowing that that's what we've got to work with until this sort of... We're looking for the silver bullet with the transfer market. I don't think it's coming.
See any other season. See if Celtic had been playing well this season, and you look at that and you go, do you know what? 3 points. We didn't play particularly well. We move on. But Stu, this seems more of a symptom of the season, and this doesn't. Yesterday didn't feel like a blip. It just feels like the mean, and maybe Dundee United was the blip in a way.
Yeah, very much so. And it's just, how can you feel confident about going to win the league when, as Barry pointed out earlier, you just don't know what you're going to get game to game. And I just can't remember a time when Celtic have struggled so much to control games against not lesser SPFL teams, but, well, yeah, like teams
Really
outside.
promoted.
They were playing in the Championship last year. And also, we've beaten them twice roundly this season already in the Cup and in O'Neill's return. So, yeah, it's very worrying. And, you know, such a what's the word? Maligned player like Nygren. I don't know if this is a controversial statement, but Benjamin Nygren is by a country mile Celtic's Player of the Year, and that's in itself an issue because he's been so inconsistent as put up some terrible performances, but it's so scary to think of where we would be without his contributions. And he just kind of felt there's players that are still hiding, not really taking ownership of it, and just such a lack of quality through the team. And I think that if you can go and sign a good striker, or even, depending on what happens with the window, if you can get Iheanacho back as a focal point and play Maeda out in his natural position, the team starts to become more functional with the correct players in the correct positions. And then if you can add one or two little bits of, whether it's just bodies, you know what I mean, just alternatives, it could look so different. But yeah, it's all very worrying. And obviously we've got the Cup games, Europa League and the Scottish Cup. And then you're off to Tynecastle, and how can you, with a straight face, think that team is going to roll into such a hostile environment against such a motivated team and turn up? Like, it's just very, very hard to see it.
I want to, on that point, obviously, as you mentioned there, we've got the Scottish Cup on Sunday, and then we've got Bologna on Thursday, and then we go to Tynecastle. So Martin O'Neill made comments yesterday. So he made comments in the pre-Falkirk presser about games, about transfers, which we'll come to in a second. But his comments yesterday post-match about transfers, we're hoping to do so. He was asked about, will there be players coming in? Will there be business be done? We're hoping to do so. That's pretty necessary. We're making progress in things, and this is the line that concerns me. And certainly by the end of the window, we should have some players to supplement this squad. I thought my time was done here, so I wasn't expecting to pick up the pieces again and look at players. Just give us a little bit of time, cut me a little bit of slack, and we'll be okay. The focus is to try and win some football matches, but the other aspect of it is to add a bit of extra quality to help the players out there. That line, certainly by the end of the window, we should have some players to supplement the squad, Barry. It doesn't fill you with confidence, does it?
It doesn't, and I was thinking, he's probably right the way he says it, but we all love Martin O'Neill and we know that he cares for the club and all that, but I think if he'd been living and breathing Celtic for the last few years, he would have known how inflammatory that, or maybe that's why he did it, that line about certainly by the end of the window, because that is not what the support need to hear. No. Not one bit. But maybe he knows the shit show and that he's been realistic. But if we were, God forbid, if we were to lose at Tynecastle, 9 points behind, would that give the board any motivation? I think to we'll go and get the striker now? Or do you think, the league's done, we don't need to?
I mean, there's a part of me that thinks they'll think, well, if we're 9 points behind, it'll be hard to claw back, so we'll hold off and we'll give money to the new manager in the summer. Yeah,
that's my worry.
And then,
or they start scrambling around because they are reactionary and then it's too late anyway.
I was just going to say, I think already the notion that they're going to spend money is not, I think that's not going to happen. And I think you could always make that argument in January when everything's rosy in the garden. But the way that O'Neill's been talking regarding, it's basically plugging holes and putting plasters over gaping wounds. Loan deals, he's referenced the Craig Bellamy deal, and I worry that he's got his sights set a little bit too high in terms, or put it this way, it is an unparalleled disgrace that Martin O'Neill is so heavily involved. Essentially, the buck is stopping with him and Sean Maloney to do this job. So I'm more than willing to give Martin O'Neill some slack in terms of like over-analysing what he's saying when he's front and centre having to bat away the questions, and certainly not looking too much into what he means by X, Y or Z. But that it creates its own issues that you have a manager who's not really been boots on the ground in football for, 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
So his notion of like going and picking up a Craig Bellamy, it's not really the sort of thing that happens anymore, where Celtic can attract a player of that calibre and in those circumstances, and that they'll finance. And I worry, I think it is positive if he said the other day that he's discarded a couple of players. Maybe those are players that were planned to come in under Tisdale, under Nancy, and he's gone, look, that's not for me, that's not going to do what I want here. The player's too lightweight, they're not whatever. But it's just like, what does he want, and how achievable is it to get that? And the reality of it is...
You both said he's not been in football for 10 years. He last managed a club side. I know he had like 9 games under Nottingham Forest, but that was post window and didn't really count because of that. The chairman there's bonkers, right?
It wasn't the same chairman at the time, though. Surely,
I think it was.
It was. Aye, that's why
Keane was talking about like his relationship with that guy.
Yeah, aye.
How long's he been there? This is another.
That was 2019.
I think he'd just come in at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, so he came in 15th of January. He came in 2019, and then he didn't last long, but 2013 is when he was the Sunderland manager. He was the Republic Island manager, obviously, after that for a long time. He's in his 70s. He said it himself. What was the quote? Essentially, he was sitting in his house. He enjoyed Christmas. He was sitting in his house, not thinking about it, and then all of a sudden he's pulled back in. Here's the quote. So, asked if he'd been presented players to make a judgment on, O'Neill responded, "That's true. I have discarded some. I think that's true. We are now," I know this is famous last words, "making progress." You're talking about agreements with clubs. See, what he does is he just describes what happens in transfers. You're talking about agreements with clubs, players themselves, players finding that, interest from elsewhere. You're competing with all these different clubs and things to consider. I know you're thinking you're halfway through January, but I think we're relatively close. Nothing has changed, really, when I've been out of the game. The January transfer window is pretty difficult. Again, that's that line. Unless you've identified a player and they absolutely know is going to improve your team that they're prepared to spend money on, I think it becomes more difficult. This all goes back, Barry, to the fact that the club should be... As I said, I know someone who works at a Scottish Premiership side currently now in recruitment who's looking at the summer. You should be working the window ahead when it comes to the window, because all that work should have been done during the downtime.
Yeah, and you made the point. What did they do? They just shut the books on the 31st of August and open up again on the 1st of January. But yeah, even just thinking to O'Neill at Sunderland, I know they're a basket case themselves, but you'd imagine even in 2013 they would have had some sort of transfer committee as well. So he's probably trying to do what he had to do 26 years ago when he came in to Celtic. Like, it's not really the done thing that managers, certainly at clubs the size of Celtic, are having to make phone calls to agents and all that anymore. And as you say, like he says, football hasn't changed that much. I would argue it has, but it's changed significantly in the last 13 years or whatever. And yeah, I kind of feel like he's a bit exasperated now with the questions. He's probably starting to realise what Rodgers was up against, and just the clusterfuck that is all the processes behind the scenes at Celtic. And if we were to get good players in and we managed to win the league, I wonder what it would look like next season, because...
Do you think they'll offer him the job?
Perhaps. I think Maloney would certainly be in the running in some role if he has managed to navigate dealing with agents and doing a wee bit of scouting. Then would he potentially become the sort of director of football? I don't know. There's been
rumours
that's been mooted as well. But I'd love to know what he actually thinks. I know that when he was at the time when Nancy was in, Simon Jordan, who I don't care for at all, but he made a good point on TalkSport that O'Neill's too close to Desmond to get a true reflection of what he really feels. And we'll probably never know what he actually feels, but he must be thinking, I didn't know how much of a shit show this was. Probably even in his interim spell, 8 weeks ago, whatever, he never realised how bad it was because he didn't have to think about transfers. But now he's probably seen like there are no processes whatsoever. And I know like was it Michael Gannon had kind of teased up that story for Monday night or Tuesday night that it was going to be groundbreaking, and there was nothing that O'Neill said that was a shock, but it was started to sort of plant the seed that he is fully aware now of how much a mess we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Welsh. Can I introduce you in Stephen Welsh? Stephen Welsh has been recalled from Motherwell. Here's just a quote from Martin O'Neill. He's a really good lad. He trained with us the other day. We'll have a look at what the situation. I didn't realise at the time. Obviously, I'm not favoured with all of the rules. Quite a few have been made up since I was last managing. But we had to recall him. Otherwise, if it went past a certain date, you couldn't do that. Stephen has a really great time at Motherwell. He's enjoying himself immensely. And yeah, if he ends up staying with us, then he'll battle on to try and get into the side. I mean, Stephen Welsh is a player that's had numerous chances at Celtic. Is this just they lack so much confidence in the transfer window that they're just calling him back because they have put the idea of bringing in a centre half so low on the list that it's just cover for cover's sake?
I think at the moment it's cover for cover's sake because I think O'Neill pointed out that, you're one or two injuries away from proper disasters and not having the squad. Like, for example, like last night was on a artificial pitch, the weekend's an artificial pitch. I don't think Dane Murray can play on those in the way that like Beaton, etc. used to struggle injury-wise, and certain players that you would have to protect. So if Trusty was injured, as rumoured, then really you don't have players to play centre half. At the moment as well, Kieran Tierney's been asked to go 3 games a week, more or less, and we all know that he's a bit of a time bomb for injuries.
Did you see O'Neill say that?
He can do more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was like, oh god.
I mean, it's fun, but it's like,
soon won't be if things.
So yeah, it's just a case of I suspect that Welsh will go back out, but who knows? And I do feel sorry for the player because Stephen Welsh you can argue his career has been pretty hindered by how poor Celtic are at handling everything. Obviously, Benjamin Siegrist talked about this in the summer about how he was promised he would go a year before. Welsh should have moved on, whether it was last year, whether it was the Udinese deal years back, or whether it was this. This is like a perfect fit for him, and it's kind of been taken away from him, at least until the summer, if they don't sort something out. And yeah, he wasn't even stripped, was he?
That's the point I was going to make. Why do you think it was came in too late for him to be involved in the squad? But if he's been playing, why would he not be on the bench last night?
I don't know. Do you think he's going to be on the bench the next couple of games? I
suspect he might play on Sunday.
You think?
I think so, because I think that
that's an artificial pitch.
Yeah, but so that's why you wouldn't want to play Dane Murray, and I think that Trusty probably needs he's played every game pretty much all season, so it's a chance to take him out.
I can't see us making too many changes just because of where we are, but in an ideal world you would, because just as we're talking about running the fixtures there, probably the last thing you want ahead of next Sunday is that Bologna game.
Yeah.
And you would normally say that sort of old adage, just play the youth, but the squad is the squad that it is.
Especially when it looks like 3 points would probably help you achieve your goals in Europe, and the Utrecht game at home is the one that's more winnable of the two.
Aye. What a nightmare, isn't
it? the Stephen Welsh is just like I don't know. I feel really sorry for him, but it's like complaining about having a blister with a broken foot or something like that, where it's not the biggest problem going on.
It's just another...
It's an equally annoying thing.
Yeah, it's just another, what do you call it, symptom of how much of a basket case we are. I just wanted to see the thing with like Balikwisha, right? So Balikwisha at Celtic this season, he obviously came in for £5 million. He's played 13 games. Seven of them. He's had 2 starts. He's played 4 Europa League games and he's played 53 minutes of them. and over 4 games he's played 53 minutes. He's played 236 minutes in the SPFL and in the Scottish Premiership, and he's played 2 League Cup games. He wasn't in the squad last week, on yesterday. He wasn't in the squad at the weekend, and no one batted an eyelid. I completely forgot. Like, when I was looking through the squad, I was like, well, that's the players we have. Taneki comes, and people maybe say, oh, well, he's come back from AFCON. Taneki came back from AFCON and went straight into the team. The question? Do I have a question? Does he have a future? Like, what? Like, is he one of the right up there with one of the worst signings we've ever made?
Pound for pound, yeah, he probably is. And
don't you?
There was rumours on the forums that he's asked for a transfer this week.
He's taken Celtic out his bio.
Yes.
Yeah, he did that yesterday.
And he had that sort of cryptic 2023, 2024.
Very
but
childish, man.
Again, it's just, you can only go on rumour, but there was rumours last night that see the bad injury he had, like, he is terrified of getting injured again, like, to the point where in training he is ducking out of tackles, etc. So, again, this was just a hearsay, but mentally he's really struggling because he's terrified of getting that injury again. But, yeah, I just feel like he must be so bad. It must be, because that's 3 managers that don't want to play him. I couldn't have told you he'd played 13 games. I would have thought it was less than 5, but I suppose there is substitute appearances. The only thing that he's done well was the cross for Dyson goal against Camaro.
He plays,
Motherwell,
well, not even he plays. Does he play the cross, or does he play the through ball to Engels? He plays the cross. Maybe it's the other way around.
Engels plays it to him and they went for his
I
cross.
mean, come on, Stuart, give him that at least.
And then that same game he won a tackle down at my end and he kind of G'd up the crowd. That's probably the highlight of his Celtic career. But
Very much like the Donegal steam train at St Johnstone.
One is the league.
Yes.
One is league, brother. Before we kind of go on to transfer, we'll finish off with some transfer. We'd not had the chance to do Celtic class or utter gash. We'll save that for next week.
I described this. I know that last week I was very enthusiastic to do it with Paul, but I think that was nihilism. And I described it as an exercise in debating whether water was wet, because there's so many of the squad that are not fit.
I would just say everyone is gash. Yeah, that concludes the draw.
It could be a nice running bet. We're like, unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Well, that's kind of what it's supposed to be.
All right. Sorry, I've ruined it.
Thanks for ruining the bet.
2 weeks in a row.
Just one comment. John Collins, one of my favourite ever Celtic players, on Rio Hatate yesterday after the game. Hatate came on as a sub. I was really disappointed in his energy levels. It was the end of the game and he looked like he'd played 95 minutes instead of 25. So these are little worrying signs for me. Normally Celtic, you think the subs come on, you're like, fresh legs, they're going to tear us up. They're going to tear the team apart in the last 50 minutes, but that wasn't the case tonight. Case in the last 50 minutes, we were hanging on against Falkirk. Celtic were poor in possession in the last 20. I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's Rio Hatate.
See, just on that, like, I read those comments earlier today as well, and I thought all of the substitutes looked like they were blown out of their arse. Mentioned McCowan earlier, Kenny. I don't know.
Did he touch the ball?
He just looked a bit lazy. He wasn't kind of shutting his man down or whatever, and I think the subs hindered us. And as John Collins says, you would think having, as you mentioned earlier, the so-called best squad in the league, the fitness levels look miles off it. And it's just
what the hell warm-up were they getting put through the side of the pitch?
That's true, yeah. Maybe they're missing that wee guy that was going down to the warm-up with them and Nancy stuff. But yeah, that was a major concern, because the one thing that Celtic players should have over every player in the league is their fitness levels, you would think, not to mention the quality that's dropped off a cliff. But yeah, and we all know that Collins is the fitness guru, so if he says it, you listen.
He's the greatest.
Get that 6-pack out.
With how poor it was yesterday, I always think that, so put it this way, see, for his legacy, I think the best thing that Rio Hatate could do is never play for Celtic again, because he is a player that seems to get better the less he plays.
Yeah.
And about the 60-minute mark, I was like, man, do you know what's just crying out for Hatate, you know, someone that's going to have a bit more of an engine and make themselves available and take the ball in tight spaces. And then he came on and just didn't look like he wanted to know, and was pretty sloppy with the ball. And I'm sure he could play next week and be amazing, but it's like,
I thought we would have got like 15 million quid for him. Now we might get a new contract. We might give him a new contract. He might stay for a while longer. I've got some transfer links. We'll certainly tomorrow we're going to do the weekend update, which we do every Friday, and we'll kind of look a little bit more deeper into some of these transfer links. This week we've had the agenda, we've had the debrief of the game, Celtic Women's Football Show coming up for you. We have the weekend update tomorrow, and then we'll have a reaction to the game on Sunday against Auchinleck Talbot. Podcasts every single day. Thecynic.co, check it out. And also, if you're on Patreon, search for The Cynic. Any questions or comments about signing up for our subscription service, editor at thecynic.co, and let us know. I'm going to throw out a couple of names. Well, kind of late today, Celtic have made an inquiry for Cal Molson Stewart. It was reported, but it was very... An inquiry could be anything. It could be, how's he doing? What's he up to? What size of his shirt does he wear? It could be his auntie.
I think that we talked about Callum Wilson a bit last week. I think Callum Wilson is a real cherry on top sort of signing, and I would much rather Celtic went and signed a striker, like a proper striker, and then brought him in with the last couple of days of the window or something, as we're also going to add an extra bit of firepower. And another thing that we haven't really had time to talk about, and it's very low in people's radars, I think, because of the number of issues at the club, but there are a number of outgoings that need to happen. And if Martin O'Neill is dealing with all of the incomings, who's dealing with the outgoings? Because do you think he's phoning around Japan trying to get rid of Shin Yamada on a loan deal? Ideally, what Celtic should be doing, if they were an even quasi-sensibly run club, is bring in two strikers and put Johnny Kenny out on loan. But again, who's going to be doing that? Who's actually helping him with these things while he runs the team?
The end of the window, to me, seems that we're going to do all of our work the last couple of days because we want to see who's available to take on loan, which completely negates what you were saying about someone like Johnny Kenny, who you just need him out the building. Like, even if it is a loan, there are guys there. But then, Barry, let me ask you this: like, what happens if we lose one of our key players? What happens if Dyson Maeda is someone that we all love? He has maybe not been in the best of form this season, but who has? So it's very hard to criticise overall. But if Dyson Maeda says, I want to go, we get a bid and it's accepted in the last couple of days, it's a massive, massive loss. And I wouldn't be confident they'd replace him.
Yeah, that is a worry. Like I say, I don't think he's been great recently, but who has? And that could be a sucker punch because he could down tools. I know that some people think that he maybe has. I was kind of reading someone online today that was saying that Dyson's getting a pretty easy time of it compared to, remember the whole sort of thing that French Eddie chucked it? Remember all that?
Yeah.
You could argue that Dyson isn't having as good an output as French Eddie did in his last season. But yeah, something like that could catch you off guard. If things weren't to go our way and Rodgers was to come in for McGregor, could he say, oh, fuck this, I'm getting out before things really go to shit? Probably not, but it's just these things that would blindside us.
They don't think about it.
No, they don't. And they won't know what to do. We were talking off air before we came on, that's all paralysed in fear. They don't know what to do. So, yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that could catch us on the hop, but also Shin Yamada, Barlick Wisha, these guys, get them out of the squad just to kind of free up these places. But yeah, the whole thing is looking pretty bleak.
Even a player like Yang, who's obviously expressed he wanted away, had his deal done and then had to come back. He's been playing really well the last few weeks, but he might have, he might not have forgotten that and might not see his long-term future at Celtic and want to take an opportunity if one comes his way. And what I don't understand is, the number of rumours we have here, largely all strikers pretty much. I don't understand why, see this Ignacio La Quintana, the right winger that Sirachi's agent was punting, what's the hold up? Because he keeps talking about how he wants to come and we need one.
He's not playing either.
Yeah, so it's like, well, why don't you just go and do an easy deal and get someone in? And obviously there's a lot to be said about why are we just going and signing someone that an agent's brought to you and vice versa. Yeah, there's a whole conversation to be had for that. The way that Sirachi came to the club is under that bracket, but he's actually performed pretty well. So maybe it is someone that can just offer you a little something for
just
a few months.
players.
Yeah.
I see at this point it's really bad, but I'm like, I don't care who they bring in. We just need fresh blood. We need fresh blood to make the other players concerned about the position in the team, if nothing else.
Yeah, just freshen it up at training or something like that. Yeah.
Hell yeah. The other kind of again, we're not going to go through all these just because I want to kind of quickly finish looking at the weekend. But there is a lot of strikers, and again, as I say, we'll kind of cover this more in the weekend update. But the one I want to ask you both about is Kieran Bowie at Hibs. He's someone that Celtic have apparently put a note of interest into, but so have Rangers, so have Wolves. The figure is £6.5 million. Barry, your thoughts on Kieran Bowie and what he would do if he did come into Celtic, and if you think it will go ahead?
I like him. Again, I think this asking price is quite hefty, but I almost feel like fucking just pay it. That's what the board deserves, to have to pay that because of their ineptitude. Am I convinced he would be the signing that would go on and win us the league? Probably not, but he would certainly give us a better chance than what we have just now. And I've got a kind of theory that I think Rangers might push the button on him and kind of gazump us, for want of a better word. I believe he is a Rangers fan. I don't know if that's...
I heard he's a Celtic fan. I've heard both.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he would make a difference to us because he is big and powerful, but kind of like Stuart said, maybe if it was him and Wilson, that might make me think that he could learn from him and Wilson would have to do the sort of the donkey work. But yeah, again, the price tag, normally I would think, oh, that's too much, but I don't actually care now because I think, Goodfellas, fuck you, pay me. I kind of feel that's what the board deserve.
Sure.
I think he's definitely better than what we have. I'm not sure that it represents value for money. If I could absolutely see a scenario where Celtic haven't done the business that they need to do and they end up spending like £9 million on Bowie at the end of the window because they just have to get someone in a sort of Adam Ida-esque, we've fucked this, like, there you go, and heaps pressure on the player to come in and be like the main man when he's not really cut out to do it. And it's with that money there, I think that there are other players that we're linked with that you could go and pick up for half that price that could offer you something. That the links the other day they're encouraging, but it's just a case of whether you get the deals done, and if you get them done in a timely fashion that they can come and contribute against Hearts, for example, because what's the point if you lose that game and you're 9 points behind and he comes in 2 days later?
Yeah, I agree. I think I like him. I think he's a good player. I think if you bring him in and you make him the number 9, I think that's a hell of a lot of pressure on the young guy, and he's probably never, he won't have experienced pressure like that. There is a part of me that thinks, since a swim moment, maybe he could swim and maybe he could become really, really good overnight because he's getting more opportunities, because he's playing with better players. But it is a risk.
Debut against Hearts. Oh, hello.
We'll finish up with Auchinleck Talbot. Obviously, they are they're in the 6th division of Scottish football. It's the Scottish Cup. It's been moved to Rugby Park. We'll have a fair support there. Barry, in terms of approach to this game, I'm worried about resting players because I think the way everything's going with this season, this doesn't fill me with confidence that it's going to be a walk in the park. What's your thoughts?
It's a kind of no-win situation, isn't it? Like, yeah, probably if it was a normal season, you would bring in like Sinisal and Welsh and all that, like Stuart said. But I feel that things are so precarious just now that it's just a case of you have to win. And Stuart and I were joking, it's a bit like the Michael Owen shooting into that 13-year-old goalkeeper. Well done, he's 13. But just the way that this season's gone, in terms of building momentum, I think it probably will be you go as strong as you can, which isn't ideal on that pitch as well. But yeah, it's just a kind of a game you have to tick off and get through because all eyes are turning towards that game at Tynecastle. Can't even think about the Bologna game either. So yeah, I feel just get through it. Hopefully it's a fairly straightforward one. It's mental even saying that because, as you say, it's all kind of like Talbot. And hopefully no injuries. And again, if we were to get a striker in tomorrow, it maybe builds excitement that your new striker could be starting in a game that, touch wood, you would hope he would get off the mark with a couple of goals or whatever, but I have no confidence that would be the case. And if Celtic were forward thinking, you would probably think that that's the perfect game for them to get in, settle, get used to Scottish football, and then a week's training. I know that they can't play in Europe, but they're in the building for a week before the massive game at Hearts, but I've no confidence that that's what's going to happen. So just get through, and then we can deal with what's coming up after that.
Kelechi Iheanacho trained today, Stuart. It's maybe a good opportunity to get him in, even if it's only half an hour, with that Bologna game, a couple of days later, and then with Tynecastle. Your confidence levels at this point, anything to fear?
Oh, for this game?
Yeah.
Aye, banana skins don't really come bigger than that. But the fact that, Palace got put out by a team 117 places below them as cup holders. You saw Real Madrid last night get put out by a first division team who are like 17th in the league. Cup upsets absolutely do happen, and Celtic have had some, and it just doesn't feel like something that could happen, or like we just get run close. I also just think that I don't know what type of football Auchinleck Talbot play, but I know what our current Celtic team don't like, and they don't like it up them. And I can imagine the likes of Tanecki, etc., just not wanting any part of it. So who knows? Win the game. Ideally, do you know what? See if you can go and stick like a 10-1 on them, like City did to Exeter or something. Maybe that's what we actually need to get everyone's confidence right back up. I do think he's going to make changes. He sort of intimated as much last night, where he was saying that hopefully, players that haven't had as much game time can get a run out. I'm not suggesting that's going to be like a full 11. Balikwisha, yeah, fuck that. Maybe it is the chance for players like Tanecki, etc., to try and find a little bit of something. But yeah, Bernardo, these kind of players that could come in and hopefully be all right. But Babs. And then maybe Johnny Kenny can get a goal, and maybe that'll just be like open the floodgates for him. Who knows? James Forrest.
Let's I think hopefully we'll be fine for Sunday, and then we've got the Bologna game. The window's open. We could sign players at any point. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll be back next week, next Wednesday. And obviously if you go to thecynic.co, you can see all the great podcasts we're putting out. Putting out about 32 podcasts a month. We're also on Patreon, so check that out as well. But this has been a joy as always. Sorry for the existential loss ahead at the start, Stuart, but we'll be back next week.
It happens to all of us. We're fine, and we'll see you then.
Lovely stuff. Barry Gallagher, a joy.
Thank you very much. Sack the board.
Absolutely. From Barry Gallagher, from Stuart Dugan, from myself, Chris Gallagher, this has been the Cynic Weekly, and we'll speak to you down the road.